Well met, everyone. I am Rich the Lich, and today I am doing a review on this. Saltmarsh'S notice boards. Here within this document, within this PDF, these pages, you will find 30 quest seeds for the high seas. This is a 42-page PDF that you can download off of DM's Guild for $4.99. Why do I say you can download it off of DM's Guild? Let's get to some business first. I have done a few reviews on some various content created by the creator of this product. His name is Christian Eichhorn, I believe. So apologies, Christian, if I say your name incorrectly. Christian has reached out to me, and we coordinated back and forth, and he asked if I could do a review on this product if he was to send me this. So this product that I'm reviewing today was sent to me. It is a review copy, though whatever you purchase and everything I talk about is exactly what you will get. So this isn't a different version of anything. When you pay $4.99 to download this off of DM's Guild, you'll get the exact same things that I talk about in this review. But that being said, I did mention to Christian before he sent the review copy out to me that I am not going to sugarcoat the review, and I'm not going to skew my perspective, my thoughts, and my opinions on it simply because I was getting this for free. And as long as there was an understanding in that, go ahead and send it to me. So he agreed. He didn't expect otherwise. It's not fair to my audience, right? Those that are going to be paying for this. If I was to skew my ratings and my various review system on this simply because I didn't have to pay for it. So I'm going to treat this as though I spent my $4.99 because that's exactly what you'll be doing. You'll find a link to it in the description where you can get on DM's Guild and download this for yourself. So let's run it through my review system, and hopefully at the end of it all, with my reviews, my thoughts, comments, critiques, you'll see if this is some content that's a good fit for you and your gaming group. Let's jump into it. We are looking at Saltmarsh'S notice boards. This is 30 quest seeds for the high seas. It is a 42-page PDF, and it is created by Christian Eichhorn. It is a collection of 30 quest seeds to be used in, I'm reading right here, Ghost of Saltmarsh, or any other campaign that leads the characters to a harbor town or island. The notes are written ambiguously so that they may appear on the mainland or an island. The majority of them deal with themes common to the oceans like pirates, haunted ships, and tentacled monsters. Don't feel yourself beholden to whatever storylines presented here, so on and so forth. Basically, shift and twist some things here as fits your individual place, your setting, even if you're not running in Saltmarsh, but certainly aesthetically and theme and vibe of everything is you're definitely going to want to use these only if you are looking for some content that's going to fit within some sort of a harbor town, a port city, or out on the ocean or something like this. So it's just stuff that can be used outside of Saltmarsh, but we're looking at 5th edition stuff that works along the coastline and pirates and the high seas of adventure. Also, it does say here, and this is important, to run these quests, ideally you need a copy of the Player's Handbook, the DMG, Monster Manual, Volo's Guide, so on and so forth, Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. And the reason for that, and we'll go over a little more nuances and details of that in content, is there are just references and pokes where it just says, hey, look in this book for this monster and so on. You are not going to really find any stat blocks here, so Christian didn't go through the labor of, for good or bad, I'll explain that in a little bit, of sort of linking what that monster looks like. So when he mentions that this is the threat that happens to be within this quest, you're going to have to look elsewhere. But let's run it through the review system. So up first is layout, design, and editing. Front cover, I'm not talking about the aesthetics of it, although that's a big overwhelming part of it. It looks good. There's a good title. I like that it has this little sort of scrawled in, etched into the wood there. We know what we're seeing here. It would have been nice to have seen maybe the author's credits at the bottom or an indication that this is for 5th edition D&D. Yes, Saltmarsh kind of screams that, as that was the Ghosts of Saltmarsh, but for people coming outside of it, thinking immediately what version of it, it would have been nice to have seen that this is for 5th edition D&D, because then at least that way it helps sell the point a little more that this can be used within any 5th edition setting versus specifically Saltmarsh content. But front cover looks good. We've got a good table of contents. The layout is fine. Everything is nice and justified, laid out appropriately. I like that you have the bold up here and the different fonts and and or I should say the same font, but you have different indications of what's bold as sort of a heading and then what's underneath it. So here you can see we've got 8 notice boards. It's got all the normal credit information. And then as we get in here, it does a really good job, as I just went over, of giving us a really good introduction and telling us what books we might want to refer to, which is important because as I'm reading, I want to be able to say, okay, where do I go on my shelf to get what book? Here you can kind of pull this PDF up on screen or have it printed out, and I can have my stack of books already with me. So it did a good job in that regard. This is really nice. I like that it has just a full piece of artwork, and then you've got, this is what we're getting into. We're getting into notice board number 1. When I say notice board, the way it's presented is sort of aesthetically as though, you go to a harbor town or something like this, and just taped up against a post is this quest list. So adventure hooks, things of that nature, right? It does a really cool job. I like that it uses this aesthetic here of laying these things out, though the fonts are very different, which I'm always really, really kind of sketchy with. Be careful of doing that because it becomes too hard to navigate. This stuff is duplicated further on into the bulk of the writing. So these are just to give us that image as though someone hand wrote these things, or 4 different people and taped them up to the board to indicate, hey, here's some things that we have a problem with. And what I mean by these things are duplicated is if you look at this one, Macabre Hammond, the famous spirit medium has arrived. Tonight he will perform blah, blah, blah. As we go through, on notice board number 1, it gives us an indicator of what level these quests are appropriate for. And it reinforces that here by saying this notice board is suitable for characters of levels 1 to 2. And then there it is, exactly. Macabre Hammond, the famous spirit medium, has arrived. So pretty cool that it lays it out within sort of those brackets, right? The little delineation between the heading of it. And then it goes into italicized font. And then you have just a bunch of text that kind of explains the situation to you. These are things for the DM to read, to kind of digest what this quest is about. And then you can see here that it gives you some little tidbits of actual gameplay mechanical things, a character who inspects the sigils and succeeds on a DC 15 intelligence check, so on and so forth. So everything is laid out really well. It's in good column format. Now here's a couple of little things. The font is nice and big, which I do like, and it has that serif font where it's just familiar, kind of medieval novel format font. But because it's so big, one thing you want to think about, Christian, is, and he had kind of, in sharing this to me and in the email, he did mention that in my review, if there's little tidbits that are not just for my audience, but for him specifically, that he can kind of use to help improve his further and, future creations. Whatever the spacing is between your letters, you want to try and go about 2.5 times spacing vertically. So you just want to maybe space that out just a little bit more. The other thing is, yes, I can tell that there is some separation between here's Hammond and the Talking Skeleton, which is one of the quests on the notice board, and then here's one called Honey Shortage. But then you have this line stuff here, and this is sort of the flavor text on like a magic card, if you will, that you can read. And to give, not just for you, but maybe even read this out to the players, of course, as this is what they see, which is kind of just explaining the overarching story of it all before you get into the mechanical details of what kind of a conflict or obstacle does this present to the PCs. But I almost feel like these brackets here, the lines, should have been around the actual title itself, because as I start navigating through very quickly, some of it can start to, I know that here we're looking at, this is a new quest, and then we have some others further down. It's a little bit harder for me to wrangle in that I don't know if this is sort of at the end of this paragraph here. It's a slight thing, but as I talk about all the time, that's the point of the layout design and editing category, right? Of it just doesn't have, these brackets I think should have been around the title to delineate and create a little more of a separator between you are ending one quest or one story element and we are getting into a new one here. So just a small little bit there. The bold use of fonts is really good in their appropriate places. It indicates to us in parentheses when we're going to be looking at another book. Like here, we're looking for the pirate captain in the monster manual. Whenever there's any mechanical bits as far as what the PCs might roll, what sort of skill checks they're making, it's in bold. So it does a good job with that, but I would have liked to have seen a little more spacing since the font is so big, and maybe a little more delineation between when one quest starts and another. So good overall. I mean, the chart use stuff here is really good with separating through these colors as you often see. The other thing is there's a few little interjections of various pieces of like flourishy artwork that doesn't really apply anything at all to the overall piece. I don't think it's necessary. There's a few where this ship fits in and stuff like that, but overall, I think everything is laid out very well. This stuff here is beautiful. It's very, very well done. I like the flavor of having different pieces of parchment as though they were all nailed up individually by different people, but then this is brought or duplicated within the document itself, so that if some of this stuff is harder to read, you're going to get all of this information within this italicized part anyway. So overall, really good use of bullets and stuff like that. There is one here where, let's see if I can find it, right here. Just a small oversight. This should have been italicized, but I'm going to give layout design and editing 1 out of 2 possible points. Now for artwork. Where the artwork is absolutely stunning. It's beautiful. The front cover is, I mean, we're looking at world-class oil painting type stuff, right? And I do believe he gives good credit to the various cover artists and interior art pieces and whatnot. So right here, by Charles Louis Verboekhoven. So beautiful front cover. And then there's a few points here where you got some cool artwork there. And then whenever you have these big sort of chapter or section headings of notice board 1, you'll see there's some good artwork here. And then you've got notice board 2, beautiful artwork. So there isn't a lot of artwork in the sections themselves of within the quest. When it talks about referring to Volo's Guide to Monsters for an Illusionist, an Owl Bear in the Monster Manual, so on and so forth, there isn't any artwork there. As I said, some of these flourishes don't fit. They're just sort of to fill in some space with something to break your eye up visually. But maybe, Christian, you could have definitely, created a bit of a border, like a design flourish, just something to give it a little more readability and confine some things, but also give you a few different ways of breaking up the eye so that I know, when I'm looking at this, so here's a black and white rendition of the purple snail, and it's talking about things like this. So this might apply, but yet that little flourish right there is just a separator. This is something separate, but this doesn't have anything to do with the individual quests. The other thing I would have liked to have seen is there's a lot of mentions of NPCs and stuff like that. It would have been cool to see some artwork in there of like, who is this Sconti person? Who is Evelyn? So on and so forth. So as I said, it kind of did a good job of kind of throwing down some traditional oil painting artwork here in the different sections, but otherwise there isn't any artwork throughout the other pieces. These are very, very well done. I like the difference in parchments, the difference in looking like it was tacked up at different times. It's laid out on a nice cool wooden board. And then, like I said in the very beginning, it's a nice touch that you get those folders that give you each of these separately as well, including the templates, should you want to create your own stuff, which is a nice little touch. I'll kind of flash them on screen real quick here. I'm still here. I'm letting you guys look through. So that's kind of the stuff you get within. So really cool touch. I like that they're different. So when we get to notice board number 3, here's what they look like, which is different than what notice board number 2 would have looked like. So good use of art in certain points, but when you're dealing with a quest and an adventure hook, and there's someone you're going to talk to that's giving you that quest, it would have been nice to have seen some more artwork, a little more consistent with what applies to what section, so on and so forth, and especially just even a small sketch or a portrait, if you will, of some of the key NPCs or something like that, especially because even though you reference the monsters that are, provide the obstacle and the conflict for the quest, you're just pointing us to another book, and there isn't any actual artwork within it of itself. But I'm going to give art 2 out of 3 possible points. Now, what do we have here? We've got 30 quests, as it says, 30 seeds, 30 adventure hooks for content-wise. There's mechanical bits where it needs to be there, like here, very quickly, honey shortage. You read kind of what that's about. This is what the PCs would have read on the job board, if you will. And then very immediately it tells you that Moy Tumbler, who, look in the human spy section in the monster manual, and you'll find the stats on that person. And then here it says a character with a passive wisdom of 15 or higher realizes that Moy is an untrustworthy character. So it gives you the bits that you need when you're dealing with gameplay stuff and mechanics. And of course, when you have any sort of conflict, it points you in the direction of where do you find the bandits, where do you find the owl bear, and so on and so forth. But it's mostly just kind of giving a lot of just flair and flavor and some theme, which is doing a really good job with it. It really does hold very true to, as it says in the very beginning, about being able to use these things in any sort of harbor town or an island or out to sea. And in that regard, that's the biggest compliment that I can give when we're dealing with the content here. Yes, this was sent to me. Yes, I've done some stuff by Christian before, and he wanted me to kind of go over this. But it wouldn't have initially been something I would have bought on my own because I'm not using anything within Saltmarsh. So if I'm not using anything within that official book, why do I need more content to work within that? But it does give me some fuel. It provides some decent flavor and some food for thought. One thing I talk about, as you know, content all the time is it something I can bring with me to the table right now immediately? And or is it something that might at least inspire me to create more of my own? So there's enough here if you're not running Saltmarsh, but you still have some content along the coastline or out to sea. There's good bits here that you can kind of work with. Now, for levels, though, everything to a certain extent, here you have notice board number 1, which is levels 1 to 2. You have notice board number 2, which is levels 1 to 2. You have notice board 3, which is levels 1 to 2. Notice board 4, levels 1 to 2. 5, you're now getting a little higher into levels 3 to 5. And 6 is 3 to 5 as well, as is 7. 8, now we get up to level 6 to 8. And that's it. So it runs a pretty good range of all the way up to levels 1 through 8. But when you look at notice board level 6 to 8, which is right here, 1, 2, you've got 4 things for characters within 6 to 8. So yes, you're only paying $4.99. But you're not getting a ton of stuff here because you're already sort of narrowing things down a little bit and confining it to the coast and confining it to areas where you're out to sea and confining it to harbor towns. And then, so that's sort of one specific thing. If your PCs happen to be there, then all of these quests and adventures might help you and be something you can use at your table. But then beyond that, if your PCs are level 7, you narrow it down further into there's only 4 quests that you're really going to use. So the point I'm getting at with all of this is, yes, there's things here that can be used outside of Saltmarsh, but I will kind of say that the content is narrowed down, and perhaps by intention. I'm just simply illustrating and highlighting that point. If you are not running stuff along and out to sea with sort of pirates and you don't want that ocean and harbor town vibe, you're not really going to find a lot here that I feel like you're going to have any real major use for. Yes, you can wrangle some things around and be inspired by it and twist it to make it fit within your own world or campaign, but you then have to kind of finagle and wrangle around between what level are they, and there's only, of the 30 of them, there may only be 3 or 4 that really apply within that level group, and so on and so forth. So it's a bit narrow in its focus, which is okay if that's what you're looking for, but just be aware of that this may not be something that's appealing to every single person or a fit at every gaming table. But where it is, it's well done, it's laid out appropriately, it gives you all the little bits you need when you're discerning between what do my players need to roll. It points you in the right direction, but you definitely do need all those books. Since there is no direct, which would have been a nice thing of sort of giving us a little quick stat block or a picture of this NPC, I need to go to Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes to find out what the sacred statue is, and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes to find out what the Eidolon is. Without that book or access to it, which I do have because I have D&D Beyond, I'm not going to be able to get any information on the main threats within this quest called A Hole in the Ocean. So you definitely need some other stuff to go along with it. But Rather than sort of talking about the good and the bad necessarily of the content, it's well written, it's well laid out, it offers you a lot. I'm just sort of highlighting to you what you're actually getting. When there's maps that are necessary, as I mentioned or I showed you, you do get that separate folder which has the map, and these are world-class, by the one and only Dyson Logos. So the maps are really laid out. That's a really nice touch that it gives that to you there. I would have liked to have seen, as I mentioned in the artwork, a little more on pictures of the key NPCs, so on and so forth. But it's there. It's just a little narrow in its focus. It may not be a fit for every group and every table. But overall, through it, there's definitely some passion here if you're into this type of stuff and this environment with this theme. So for that regard, I have to give this a 4 out of 5 for content. And with all of that, this is my final score. I hope this helped you guys to see whether or not this might be a good fit for you and your table. Thank you, Christian, so much for sending it out to me. Anyone out there who has some other content, authors and creators, if you want to send me some stuff, as long as you know that I'm going to give it the appropriate treatment for my audience, I'm going to tell it like it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. If it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. I'm going to bring it up. But pretty cool. Good job, Christian. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and take care.